Okay, hello, hello. I am just getting everything started here. Um, I'm going to just pull up my chat so I can see who we've got. And we're just going to give it a couple minutes before we officially get started. Here's my chat. Okay. Excellent. All right. So we'll give it one more minute before we get started. I see some people are joining us already, and it's so nice to see some familiar faces. That's awesome. Please forgive the mess behind me. It's Christmas. I've been really busy. It's just, it is what it is. This is a working space, so welcome to my working space. I'll be demonstrating on my easel today, and I'll try to kind of bring that up to the camera as best as I can whenever I need to, just so you can kind of see some of the details as well. So I know that there are some people that are going to be watching this. They picked up kits from me, but they told me that they can't be here for today. So they'll be watching this on YouTube afterwards. So for anybody who is joining us right now and you need to maybe watch something over again, maybe it's you know, if I went too quick at one point and you need to watch it over, it will be posted on the Town of Okotoks YouTube channel, so you can watch it over again. This is an all ages class, so we have adults doing this and we have kids doing this. I am going to show two variations of this, and the one is going to be like the little guy that you see here in front of me. That's this little mouse with the tree. The second one I'm going to do is more for like the really younger kids. So if you're maybe 5 years old, 6 years old, and you're just kind of getting used to fine motor, then we'll do another one where the mouse is actually facing forward. And the reason why we're doing that is sometimes I've noticed from my experience teaching younger kids is the side profile is a really kind of tricky concept for younger ones to get. When we have it on the side, our younger kids still want to put both eyes because we know both eyes are there. As adults, we know that when we turn our face, we only see one. But for kids, that's a little bit trickier. So what I'd like for you guys, what we're going to be using today is your piece of barnwood. And if you don't have barnwood, any other type of wood will actually do for this. If you've got something like a wood panel like this works as well. Even something as simple as particle board or plywood, I've used that with this material as well, and that works too. You have the option, if you are using this instead of barnwood, you have the option of actually painting the whole thing. And that's kind of like what I've done with these little guys here. This is the same materials, but I've actually painted the whole thing instead of leaving the background. But if you are using barnwood, the whole purpose of it is to see that sort of rustic look behind it. So we do want to have that. We are also going to be mixing our, and Crystal, I see that you just joined us. You didn't miss anything, don't worry. We're going to be mixing our paper mache mix today. I do recommend that you use a mask for that. And I guess that's the good thing about this pandemic, is that a little while ago, if I said, you know, grab a mask, that might have been a little tough, but we all have masks. So if you don't have your mask handy, I do recommend that you go and get it. So we'll have our barnwood, we have our paper mache mix. So what I'm using today is called celluclay. I always buy it in bulk because I use it for so many teaching projects when I go into school. So I've got big bags like this. It's a lot like instant. You can also get something called instant mache, which is very similar to that. You'll need some clean water. The temperature is not that important. It's more for comfort, but around room temperature is great. And I also have another bowl of water. This will just be for dipping my hands in. So when you're working with this, it can get a little bit mucky. So having a bowl that you can dip your hands in just to kind of clean off the hands and keep them moist is going to help as well. And then I have another bowl over here. And if you got a kit from me, you had a bowl and then inside was a bag filled with that paper mache pulp. So this is where we're going to be doing our mixing, okay? So I'll put up 2 of my pieces of barnwood here. And actually, I'll use this one instead. Depending on, you know, barnwood is one of those things that's meant to be rustic and a little unpredictable. So, you know, for some of you might have a piece like this, where it's kind of rounded on one side and flat on the other. It's totally up to you which side you want to use. I kind of prefer to use the flat side if that side looks good to you. This is another piece here where, you know, one side looks like it's got old paint on it, and then the other, it doesn't matter which side you use. It's a personal choice, so that's going to be completely up to you. I want you to just be aware that because it is so rough, you can get slivers. So try not to go crazy with like rubbing your hands over top of it or anything like that. I know that's common sense, but I do like to just say that out loud just to make sure we're all being safe. So one of the limitations of this format that I'm teaching in, this is a webinar, which means I can't see you guys. If you need any questions at all, I do have my chat pulled up. So I can take a look and I can kind of keep an eye on any questions that might be coming in. If I'm going too fast, you can say, slow down, please. That's kind of the best we can do right now. I also like to see results. I love to see what you're working on. Today we're not going to be totally done. Next week we're going to be painting this, and that's when things are going to come together. But you know, if you want to take a picture of your finished product at the end of next week and send it to me at jennydaledesigns@gmail.com, or for those of you who live close to me, you can always just hold it up from across the street. And I'd love to see that as well. So let's get into it. All right, I'm going to put on my mask because the first part is mixing my paper mache. I'm doing this by feel. I'm not really measuring. So you really want to get your hands in there and get them dirty. If you're wearing rings, take those rings off. So I'm going to put my mask on, and I'll have my bowl for mixing. And what I'm going to do is just grab a handful of my mix. So for those of you who got a kit from me, so here's my handful. It's pretty generous. If you got a kit from me, don't use the whole thing. You're probably looking at half or even less than half than what I gave you. Now, from here, I'm going to take my clean water, and I'm just going to slowly put it in, but just a little bit at a time. So I'm putting a little bit in, and you can see it gets absorbed pretty fast. And then I'm just kind of pushing that down. Now I can see that there's still a lot of dry pulp around the edges. So I'm going to add a little bit more and push it down again. What I'm looking for is a consistency where I can kind of make a ball out of what I'm, out of my paper mache piece. So it's kind of like when you're making, I guess I'd compare it to peanut butter cookie dough. You know how you can pick up peanut butter cookie dough and you can make it into a ball? That's kind of what we're looking for. Or Play-Doh. Play-Doh is another one that you can kind of compare it to. So you can see I'm just going little by little. And after every time that I add some, I'm mixing that in. Now, if you do add too much, you can always add a little bit of that paper mache pulp back into it to kind of firm it up a little bit. So mixing, get right in there with your hands. And you can kind of see the dust rising from it, and that's why it's nice to have a mask. Compared to other paper mache projects, so if you are my age, you might remember that paper mache for me in school always meant putting newspaper on a balloon. And it wasn't until I got to university that I realized it didn't have to be newspaper on a balloon, that paper mache actually became one of my favorite mediums. So compared to that, this is actually incredibly tidy. It's a tidy way, a clean way to use paper mache. So you can see here how it's kind of sticking together. You see how if I picked it up like this, it could form a ball. That's what we're looking for, okay? It's not dripping, it's pretty solid. That's what we're looking for, okay? You'll probably use less than you think. So about what I've got here, this will be more than enough for my 2 projects. So I'm gonna get started in just a minute here. My hands are gonna get mucky. And some kids or some people don't mind the muck. I know there's others that are like, oh, this is disgusting, but yeah, we get dirty when we do art, so don't worry about it. So the dust is settled. I'm gonna take off my mask. And now I'm ready to start on here. Now I know some of you guys might feel a little bit nervous working directly on the wood. We're so used to always sketching things out, having that solid plan. But the thing is with this is as you're putting the paper mache on the wood, you're going to be covering up any drawing that is there. So if you're taking all that time, and I find younger kids especially will take time to put every little detail, and then we end up going right on top, and that can be really frustrating. So what we're focusing on instead is shapes. Everything, whether you're painting or drawing or sculpting, everything comes down to shapes. Shapes that are getting put together. So we're going to look at the shapes of our design, and we're going to make those shapes and put them together with paper mache. So I'm going to take a little bit in my hand here. Okay, I'd say that's about the size of my thumb. And the first thing that I'm going to make is the ground. So just at the bottom here, I'm kind of smushing and spreading. Smush and spread. Okay, so I'll hold that up a little bit closer, smush and spread. Now the nice thing is this is snow, and it's not meant to be sort of perfect, right? But I do want it fairly smooth in the sense that there's no, like, see how there's, I'll hold this on the side, there's that kind of chunk sticking out. I don't really want that chunk sticking out because I know it's soft now, but when this gets hard, those chunks can actually be kind of sharp. So I'm just going to make sure that those chunks are down. And I'm just using my fingers to smooth that out. I'll do another one on this since I am demonstrating 2, but it's the same idea. Just getting that down there. Now the thickness, this should not be any thicker than, say, the width of your pinky should be the absolute thickest. I'd even say start with half or less than half than that. If I were to turn this on its side, you see that's maybe 2 millimeters up. So we're really not raising it that much. So please, please keep that in mind. The problem is when we start to get it too thick, it's not going to dry properly. It can dry, when it dries unevenly, it might fall off the wood. Right now, this sticks just fine onto the wood, but if it gets too thick, it might not stick on the wood that well. If that does happen, let's say it doesn't dry evenly and suddenly part of your design falls off. This can be glued on with just white glue. All it is paper. So paper to glue to wood, you just need a little bit of glue. So there's always a solution to any problem that comes along. So I've got my ground. Now my next thing I'm going to do is my tree. If we look at my sample here, I did my tree, it's not really in the middle, okay? This is about the middle here. So it's off from the middle, and I did my tree kind of curved because I like things that are curved. Yours doesn't have to be curved. In fact, yours doesn't even have to be a mouse with a tree. You can make whatever you'd like. This is your piece of art. This is what I'm providing here is just like ideas and instructions so that you can go and you can take this into your own direction. So I have this piece here, and I'm just kind of gonna roll it in my fingers like this until it becomes, and I can kind of squeeze it until it's like a snake. This is going to be the trunk of my tree. Okay, so I'm just pinching it until it becomes a snake. And, oh, mine broke a little bit, that's okay. I'll just take a little bit of that and start it just off to the side And as I'm putting this down, I'm kind of press and pinch. So I'm going pinch as I'm putting this down. So press and pinch, press and pinch. Now, if your hands get really mucky, do dip them in some water. And if you need to use that sort of that moisture that's on your hands, not too much, but you can really use that moisture to kind of smooth things down a little bit. And I'm letting my tree curve a little bit. It's going up. I'm going near the top. You get to decide how tall your tree is. Maybe you want it shorter than the mouse. Okay. It's totally up to you. There we go. Again, I'm going to keep doing this over here. The nice thing too about me doing 2 samples for you, I kind of feel like it slows me down. Sometimes when I can't see you working, my pace can get a little fast. And I do apologize for that if I do go too fast. But like I said, if there's anything that you do need to see again, you just need to look at the Town of Okotoks website, or sorry, YouTube channel after this is posted. And you'll be able to kind of catch up on anything. Now you can see this one, I didn't really keep that as pinchy here because I know that we're going to go over top of that with the branches, but I kept that trunk pretty thin. Okay. All right. Now we're going to start that little mouse, and I'm going to hold this up for just a minute, and we're going to stop and look at the shapes. So the first shape I want to look at is my mouse body. And I'm not looking at any of the details. I know it's easy to kind of get wrapped up in thinking, oh, there's an arm and look at the shape of that leg. And oh, I don't know. It's not. It's not. You have to simplify your brain. All this is an oval. Just an oval. All this is for the head is just a circle. We're just starting with the circle. The ears, circles. And then we're going to move on to our tail, and we'll move on to our other little details. But let's start with those main shapes. So my sideways guy, who's going to look like this, I'll do that here. And my front looking guy, which is the kind of the easier version, I'll do that on this one. So I'm going to take a ball of my clay, and I'm going to put it in my hand and gently roll it. If it doesn't work to gently roll in your hand, just using your fingers to roll also works good. Yours might be bigger or smaller than mine. I can kind of hold it up there. I want it to kind of be a bit smaller than what my mouse body is going to be, because I'm going to be pressing that down, and as I press it down, it will kind of expand. So here I am pressing down the mouse body. Mine isn't touching the bottom here. I'm probably going to change that after, but for now that'll work. And the way that I can change that after is either bringing up the bottom of adding more ground underneath them, or even the feet. But I think right there, so it kind of looks like a floating oval, will do just fine. For my front facing mouse, same thing. So I'm going to take my paper mache, roll it, and then my front facing mouse is going to just have his body pretty much the same, right? Okay, and I think we can all handle that. No matter how old we are, we can handle making a ball. Okay. All right, next. I always make little funny noises when I'm all by myself here. Next, I'm going to get another ball. And this one's going to be a little bit smaller than my first one, but really not too much. My style, as you guys are most likely aware, I do like to make things like pretty cute. And one of the things to make things cute is to make them look like a child. So a child, their head in proportion to their body, they've still got a pretty big head. So I tend to make my heads exaggerated. And that's the trick that most illustrators will do, is they'll make their heads a little bit bigger on their characters. So this little head is going to go right here, and I'm going to press this down. Now the tricky part for this, I'm going to just dip my fingers in the water here. The tricky part, which might not be so tricky after all, but is just making a little sort of a nose shape. So I'm taking my finger and I'm just kind of pressing this. So do you see how I did that? I just kind of pressed that down and I've got a little bit sticking up. So I just kind of came in from the top and pressed that, and I've got a little bit sticking out. That will be like the muzzle of his nose. And I'm just using my moist finger there just to kind of smooth that out. For this guy over here, we don't have to do that last step of making the side nose because he's looking forward. So I'm just taking the ball and I'm going to add that right to his head, just like this. All right. Now, before I go any further with my mouse, I realized I didn't put the branches on my tree, and that's okay. I think I'm going to do that right now. Sorry guys, I forgot all about those little branches. It doesn't really matter what order, but it's going to just let me know how much room I've got here. So I can see that this is coming pretty close. So he might not have really big branches on this tree, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and put the branches on the tree. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to grab little pieces like this. And it doesn't matter if you start at the top or the bottom, but I'm just kind of putting that little piece on. And I'm squeezing it out like a triangle. So I'll show you that again. I've got my little piece and squeezing it out. And I kind of pinch the end of it like a triangle. Okay. This can be as full or as raggedy looking as you want. For my younger kids, you could even just do a plain triangle tree. That works too. So this is really up to you, however that tree comes together. There it goes. So I'm just going to make sure that branch doesn't hit him too much. Sorry about that, guys. I should have done my branches a little bit ahead of time, but that's okay. And that branch, again, just watch the thickness of this. Don't let it get any thicker than the width of your pinky, because we want this to dry nice and even. We don't want it to fall off as it's drying, although like I said, that is something that can definitely be fixed. Now, if you realize that your tree is too close to your little mouse, it's really an easy fix. So this, I think, is going to be fine on this side. It's kind of nice to make a few little mistakes as I'm doing this, because it shows how to solve some problems. So that's looking really good on that side. On this side, I actually think I might move this over a little. So you could actually just peel that off and just re-stick it. When you do re-stick it, just make sure that you're pressing down hard enough and just kind of using my fingers there to make sure that it's grabbing onto the wood. I'll push in the sides. So I just gave it a little bit more room. If you had that same issue that I did, that's how you would fix that. And I'll push that down. It's kind of like I'm tucking him in his little blanket by pushing around there. I'm going to make the tree on this one a little bit simpler. I'm going to make it just like a triangle tree. So what I'll do for my triangle tree, I'll start by at the bottom. And I just kind of laid it flat. And then I'm kind of pushing it up in sort of like a triangle shape. So just using your finger to kind of guide that along. And then we're going to come over here and just use your finger to push it back a little bit. Just like that. Okay. So that's sort of an easier way to do the tree if you don't want to do all those branches. And for our younger ones that might be watching us right now, that might be the best option for you, is to try and make that just look like a triangle. There. All right. Now I'm going to start to put an ear on my mouse. Now I got pretty fancy with the sample. If you look at it, you can actually see the ear behind it, then his toque, and then the ear in front. That looks really complicated right now, but we're going to really break that down. There's going to be a little bit of homework, so we're actually going to do the toque part after this is dried. I will demonstrate it for you, but that's something that you're going to do maybe tomorrow or the next day, sometime before next week. You'll be adding the toque to this, just because those 3 layers can get a little tricky. But the other thing to realize too is that when we start to paint, that's when we can kind of really bring the details out. And in some cases, we actually make the paint, the way we can paint it is to almost trick it into looking a little bit more perfect than it is. So, and you'll see what I mean by next week. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pretty small amount for my back ear. So this is pretty small. I'd compare it to like the nail of my pinky finger. And I'm going to come behind here and kind of press that down into the wood. I'm getting my finger wet just to kind of help it along. So it's behind there. And it's pretty flat to that wood. So I'll bring that up closer so you can see. Do you see how it's almost looks like it's receding? So I've got this sort of lump coming forward, and that's almost flat. Now for the ear that's closer, that's up front, I'll take another circle. This one can be a little bit bigger. And I'm going to put that in front. And then I'm going to take the back of my fingernail, and I'll hold this up a little closer so you can see. So I've got this here. Now the back of my fingernail is just going to go in like this. And that, I'm going to start to sort of blend that. And do you see how that makes that little dip in his ear? So I'll hold that so it kind of keeps its shape, and then blend that little ear in. Now for my younger kids, we're going to use a very similar technique, but we're going to see both the ears. So I'm going to take my little ball of clay, or paper mache, and this one's going to be here. It's going to kind of come in front of my tree a little. And again, you can just use your fingertip or the back of your fingernail and make that little dent. So do you see how there's that little dent? Just like that. And then I'm going to take another piece that's about the same size. Get my fingers a little bit wet. Press it in here. And I can see if I don't have it quite the same size, I can kind of come in and push it around until I'm happy with it. One thing to know about me is I'm a very intuitive artist. So I tend to go by how things feel rather than measuring. And I tend to just kind of play with things until they feel right. So there's my little mouse facing this way. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually continue working on this guy, because for his nose, we've already done the nose coming out for this, but for his nose here, or her nose, I'm going to make another little ball. So that's about the size of my pinky nail. And that's going to go right down here. And I'm really gently sort of tapping that on. He looks like he's sideways. That's okay. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to do the hind leg and the foot. And we're going to do it the best we can, but again, I mentioned this before, that like after it dries, after a day, you can come back and do a few extra details to really bring out the shape. So this is what we're looking at here. So we kind of see that it's like kind of a round shape to begin with. So I'm starting with a round circle, a round ball. And get this a little bit wet because my fingers are getting a little mucky. So I've got my round ball. And I'm just going to put that down like that. And then I'm going to put a little foot sticking out. I'm going to take a little bit of my paper mache like this, rolling it in my fingers. And then this goes on the bottom. For the arm, I'm going to take a little piece again, about the same as what I did for the leg. Okay, it's just like this. And kind of placing it on there. I realize this guy's a little bit closer to the tree than my sample was, but that's okay. So over here on my front facing mouse, I really just have to take a little bit of clay, roll it in your fingers, and I'll put a little bit right on the side. So it should kind of look like that hind leg sticking out from the side. Another little piece of clay, roughly the same, or it should be around the same size. And that's going to come here. For his little feet, just a tiny, tiny, tiny ball of clay. These little tiny feet. So I'm really just, this is so little. I'm going to put it down here. His foot. Another one right here for his other foot. And he's going to be holding his Christmas ornament out front, like this. So I'm going to put 2 arms. So one of them, again, I just kind of did the same thing as I did for the arms on the other one, a little bit like this. I rolled it in the fingers. And stick that on. And another one. Roll it in the fingers. Stick it on. And I can also take a little ball for his Christmas ornament that he's going to hold. Or if you want him holding something else, you can always make him hold something else. Candy cane would be really cute. There's this little ornament right there. Okay. All right, now I'm going to make a tail for both of these. The tail is going to be pretty much the same for both of these. So the way we're going to do that, we're going to start at the base of the mouse, so at his bottom, and then we're going to kind of move our way up. So it's going to come out. I like to have things pretty curly, so I'm going to make it as curly as I can. Before I start this though, my hands are looking a little mucky. I'm just going to make sure that they're a little bit cleaner, because that does make it a little bit smoother. So I'm just dipping it in the bowl. And I'm not going to dry them off. I do want them a little bit wet, because that does help with really, it helps with molding it, I guess. Try not to get it too wet. You don't want this to fall apart. So I've got another little piece of clay here, and starting at the base of this little guy, I'm pressing it down, and I'm kind of doing a press and pinch like this. That's kind of the motion with my hands. Press down and pinch it together. So press and pinch, press and pinch. And as I'm doing that, thinking about where my tail is going to go next. So I'm pressing down and pinching, down and pinching. I know that might be a little tricky for some of our younger friends who are following along right now. Just do your best, and remember that you don't have to get it done as fast as I'm going right now. If it takes you a little bit longer, then it takes you a little bit longer, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with just taking your time and just finding that groove. So pressing this down and pinching. Oh, I guess the tail wanted to go this way today. It's a little bit different than my sample tail. My sample tail, I went out and just curved this all the way down. Maybe that's a really curvy tail. All right, I'm going to do another tail over here. Again, I'm taking this, kind of rolling that in my fingers. And I'm going to start just on the side here. And we're slowly just curving it. Give them a nice long tail. Tails are one of the funnest, mice tails, I feel like they're the funnest thing to draw. So if you know my book, Greenie the Wheat King, I had so much fun with my mice tails in that book. And I know some of you have that book, and I'm so thankful for you guys. But yeah, they can be really, really fun. So wherever that tail feels like going today, you just let it go. Okay, now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to start to kind of see where I might need to fix anything or change anything. There's a little gap here in between the bottom of my mouse and the ground, and I really want that to be filled in. So this bottom part, I'm just going to add a little bit under here. You might not have the same issue that I did, or you might. That's just a solution that you can come up with there. If you want to add ornaments on the tree by making little balls and putting them down, and you can put a little ball in this guy's hand. I guess we haven't done that yet. You can do that. In my sample, I actually just painted it on. So if you look at this, they look like they're popping out. They're actually not. So that's going to be up to you. I do like it, how it can pop up there. So if that's something you want to do, you can. But you might actually want to save this for tomorrow. And let me show you. So this is one that I did yesterday. And if you've got some clay left over, you'll find that by the second day, it's actually a lot firmer. It's not quite as sticky, but it works pretty well for adding some details. So here my tree is still pretty flat, the same way we have it. If you want to add a little bit of dimension to that tree, after it's dried, so either tomorrow or the next day, You can put on another layer after that. That'll make that pop up. So here I just kind of, if I turn that to the side, do you see how I've made it kind of pop up? And then I'm pinching that. And I'm almost making that into like a triangle shape. So definitely, especially for our younger kids, this is definitely optional and you don't have to do this. But if you do want to, then I do recommend letting it dry first, because that will give you a solid base to really help this pop up. So I'm just coming in here and I'm squeezing that. And it just helps to kind of give that some neat form. So that's one of the things that is your homework if you want to do that. Now I also mentioned that the hat on the mouse is another thing that is going to be something to do after this is dried. So either tomorrow or the next day or sometime before we meet again on Saturday next week. So just let me finish putting these extras on this little guy. That's dried. So again, this is after you've let the base of it dry. So this is our base. After you've let the base of it dry, this is how we can put more on it, just to give it more form. Oh dear, my cat. Okay. And I'll put a little bit over here. Now, for the hat, I'm going to take a little bit of my clay, and I'm going to make that into kind of a tube shape. I'm going to press that on across here. Now, see, I've put that on and I've kind of made it go like this. It's almost like putting a headband on him. And then I'm going to take another little ball of clay, and this is going to be the little pom-pom. So wherever that pom-pom can stick, it's great. If you got a kit for me, I included a little skewer in there. And this skewer is great for making like little lines. So here I'm just making little lines on the toque. And anywhere else that I feel like I need lines. And then I would just take and start to smooth some of this out. This is also a good chance, if you did add the texture, then this is a good time to put the ornaments on after you've added that texture, if you want some ornaments showing on there. So just like where, oh, that's a big one. Maybe not that big. There. So I can start to put those ornaments on my tree. Okay, wherever they might go. You can put a couple dots for the eyes, but you don't really have to because we'll be painting them. But you could just do like a little line down and then a little line across for the mouth. That's really optional though, because when we do paint, you're gonna have a chance to do those details. And then the last thing I want you to do is just do kind of a one over and get your fingers wet and just start to smooth out whatever needs to be smoothed out. After this is dried, you actually can sand it. So if you are, if you've noticed that it's gone on pretty rough, you can sand it, but I find it easier, especially for our younger ones, to just do that smoothing right now when it's wet. So all I'm doing to smooth this is just keep your fingers moist and smooth it as best as you can. Oh, this little guy needs a toque too. So for this guy's toque, I'm gonna take, or I guess that would be for tomorrow. Like, it's easier to do it after it's dried. But I will show you on this one. It's not impossible to do the toque on this guy. at this point. So again, I added almost like a little headband, like this. That's probably a bit thick, but that's okay. He's got a little headband there. And then just a little ball with a pom-pom in there. And then you could take this. So like I said, you can wait till tomorrow after this is dried a little bit to do that part. Okay, but I'm just going to continue smoothing it. So now if you've got any little bits that kind of went over the edge, so I see a lot of them over here, when they dry, they can look a little bit bright. And you don't necessarily want that. And I'm going to show you a solution for kind of going over it next week when we do our painting. But you can just get your fingers wet and kind of get as much of those sort of stray little pieces off as possible. But there's plenty of solutions, including actually turning some of those little pieces into snowflakes. That's probably my favorite solution because it's like instant snowflakes in the back. Or we can just paint it over with brown. But if you want to get some of that off, I just take my finger gets wet and I just kind of scrape away some of the ones around the edge. So that's pretty much all we need to do for today. So like I said, let this dry for a day or two, and then you can maybe come back to it and maybe see if you want to add more to the bottom, if you want to build up that snow a little bit further. So if you can see here, he's kind of hanging off the edge. So if I did, after a couple days after that's dried, if I added a little bit more snow to the bottom, it can really make it look more like he's sitting on the snow. It can make it look a little bit more meaty. But I would wait until that's dry, just because, like I said before, if we put it on too thick right now, it's going to fall off and you're going to get frustrated. So save a little bit of that clay or mix a little bit extra for tomorrow and just get a little bit on there. You can add the texture for the trees tomorrow. You can do the hat tomorrow as well. So that's our first step. Are there any questions that you want to type into the chat? Wait a couple minutes, but also please feel free to reach out to me via email. If you're having some major problems that you don't know how to fix, then take a picture of what you've got and I will look at that picture and I should be able to analyze it for you. I could even make a video for you to help you if you need that. But it is pretty straightforward. And even if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, it's going to look exactly like yours, which might even be better. And I love to see things that are a little bit different. So, so next week, what we're going to need, we'll be doing some color mixing. So if you got a kit from me, I gave you 3 primary colors. I gave you blue, red, yellow. I also gave you white, black, and brown. I'm not a fan of using black. The black is really there just for the details, but because we're using gray, I thought I'd be nice and give you guys some black, but there's other ways to make gray without black. We'll be mixing our green together. We'll be mixing our pink. So the brushes, I gave you 2 brushes in your kit, but if you don't have a kit from me, you'll want to have, I don't know where I put my brushes, but you'll want to have 1 flat brush, still pretty small, it's about this thick, and another one that is like a thin, like just a smaller one. And that's going to be for the details. We'll go through some brush strokes. So if you have scrap pieces of paper for next time, to just practice some of those brush strokes, especially for our young ones. Because sometimes we just need to, review how do we hold the paintbrush and what makes a small line, what makes a big line. And thank you, Jenny, for your comment. It's really sweet. So also we're using acrylic paint next week. So do make sure that your surface is protected and also your clothes, because if it does get on your clothes, it won't come off. This stuff that we're using today, very washable. It's just paper. it can get a little bit mucky, but I hope you can see that this is such a different paper mache project than the newspaper on the balloons that we're so used to, that are just a mess. Trust me, I've done it with like 50 kids at one time, and it gets crazy. So yeah, so that's it. That's about all. And I'm really excited to see you guys next week, and I'm really thankful for all of you. So do reach out, please, if you have any other questions. And if not, I'll see you next week. And yeah, enjoy. Thanks, guys.